Good. Okay. Great. Okay, so please to conclude with what we started on the group discussion, please you need to do that. Now, what I realize is that because of the nature of the course is there's not a lot of content, but the content is divided into a lot of topics, and for some of these topics we are not too familiar with. Therefore, if you do not form study groups, it becomes very difficult for you to, as it were, keep up. Okay, and the course coordinator, Dr. Yasser Godajima, what he's doing now is that he has started um he has started going the route of the questions set for the senior high schools. They're not so straightforward. It's a form of a preamble. Therefore, you need to understand the preamble in order to engage with how to solve the question. So you first of all need a deep understanding of the content, not just chewing and pouring, before you can make any headway with the course. So please form the study group. I'm still yet to hear from anyone on anything you don't understand. I find it hard to believe that you understand everything we are doing. It's not possible because it's a lot. It's very demanding, somewhat. So please form the study group on your own. You can always get in touch. Then when you're able to get together to discuss what you don't understand, you can even invite me to your study group. I can join. Okay. You can even invite me to your study groups of online. I can join, and then we can make headway. Okay, so now today we are doing units 4 and 5. I'm leaving unit 6 for next week because we'll use about an hour and a half, or let's say 2 hours to complete unit 6 next week, God willing. Then we use the rest of the period for any issues you don't understand in relation to the course. So that is how I'm going to do it. Today we do unit 4 and 5. Then next week we look at unit 6 and then do a Q&A, an extensive 2.5 hour, 2-hour Q&A. But before we move forward, are there any questions, any outstanding issues before we did last week or last 2 weeks? Is there anything you don't understand that you need me to clarify? Okay, yes. Nana Boaji.
Hello, sir. Good morning.
Good morning, bro.
Please, I would like to know if the questions will be set based on the slides or the course manual.
Okay, so if you remember very well, I explained that the slides are just a summary of the course manual. So I would suggest that you read the course manual and use the slides to sort of complement it. So the answer is the questions will come from both, but of course, the course manual will be the first point of reference.
Thank you, sir.
Is that okay? Okay, sir. Any other clarification?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
No. Is there any other? Okay, let's move on. So today, as I started last week, we are dealing with rites of passage. Now, this is a very common topic. I'm sure most of us have taught it over and over again. But probably what is new under this topic is over here, we will try to apply what you already know at the end of the course to certain rituals, to try to apply how rites of passage play out in naming ceremonies, how rites of passage play out in funerals, how rites of passage play out in puberty rites. Previously, we've always understood that puberty rites are example of rites of passage. But if you go further into the content, realize that rites of passage, the 3 phases, play out in almost every ritual we can discuss in African traditional religion. So let's start. I'm trying to move my slide. Sorry, hold on. Okay. So this is what we want to achieve at the end of the course. We want to understand rites of passage and how it applies to rituals. And also, we would also engage the concept of sin. What is sin? And then how can sin be removed in African traditional religion? Okay. So, as I always try to do, let us look at some common definitions before we delve into the real content. So, rituals. Rituals permeate almost every religion. In fact, rituals permeate every religion we have in the world. But it's the rituals that um, consist of an outward sign of what the person is trying to do for himself and for anyone observing. This is a common definition. Rituals are repetitive, they are sequential, they are stylized, and they are communicative actions in the form of gestures, utterances, or acts in the use of objects. So this is the definition of rituals. I always like to use the Catholics. The Catholics have a very, very unique way of trying to show off their rituals. They stand, they sit, they genuflect, they kneel. The Muslims also have a very complex system of rituals where during their prayers they have about 4 or 5 gestures they carry out to show that they are praying. Okay, so these are examples of rituals in other religions. When you apply it to African traditional religion, they also have their own forms of rituals which they use to express their religion. Then an initiation, a common English term, it talks about how a ritual ushers a person to a new role. Then we will also be engaging in what we call rituals and transformation. Now, what a ritual does is that it introduces you into another state, either in the physical realm, what we usually refer to as the profane, or in the spiritual realm, what we call the sacred. So when you hear profane or sacred, profane doesn't mean something which is necessarily corrupt or something which is sexually inappropriate. It simply refers to anything physical we can see. Then the sacred will refer to the spiritual. So rituals usher us into various states, either in the spiritual or the physical realm. The first one is what we call the cognitive transformation. Okay, cognitive transformation. Based on ritual, the first thing, ritual ushers you into a cognitive transformation. This means that you can undergo certain rituals where you acquire new knowledge for performance of a new role. Then we also have biological transformation. Okay, for example, my sister now went depot when she attained a menarche. My mother is a couple, so when my sister attained a menarche, she underwent depot rights. That is a biological transformation. The body has changed biologically to start undergoing menstrual cycle every month. Then there's also a status-related transformation where a person is usually ushered into a new role, into a new office, like chieftaincy or the traditional priesthood. Now, we will be coming across, or you may probably have met this name in when we talk about rituals. Arnold van Gennep. He's a very popular anthropologist who did a lot, who dedicated a lot of his life to understanding rituals in the indigenous context. Okay. And then he argues that rituals or rites of passage accompany every place, state, social position, or age. So when you do a quick examination of everything we do, for example, if you were doing this course in person, you have done what we call matriculation. So it is assumed that until you are matriculated, you are not identified as a student. That's why it's very important that the ritual of matriculation is done at the beginning of every course. Likewise, when you graduate, the ritual of graduation is carried out so that you are accepted as a graduate. But before you go through the ritual of graduation, you are a graduate. Okay. So rituals according to Anna Van Gennep permeate every aspect of our life, and not only during birth, during marriage, and during death. That is one point that I want us to also understand. So we'll also be looking at what we call movements. We've looked at what we call transformations, where you can have cognitive transformation, you can have biological transformation, but you also need to familiarize yourself with what we call movements. So when you undergo rites of passage, you attain certain what we call movements, also called statuses. So a rite of passage can move you from the profane to the sacred. For example, before a chief is ordained, before a chief is installed, the person is in the profane realm, the person is the physical realm. But after the chief undergoes chieftaincy rites, the person becomes a sacred entity. Okay, so that's the movement from profane to the sacred. And this example I've given away. Also, are you aware that before a child is named, the child is considered a spirit? For example, in the Kan traditional religion, among the Fantis, before a child is named, it is considered a spirit. Until the child is named, the child becomes human, profane. Okay, so naming ceremonies are an example of how a person is moved from the spirit world to the spiritual world. Then we can also have a movement from the physical to the physical, or from the profane to the profane, where a married person who is not spiritual by nature still moves into another status as a married person, which is profane. Okay, so from profane to profane. Then we also have a transition where a person is already considered a spiritual entity, but the ritual still converts the person within the same spiritual entity. So, for example, a traditional priest or a chief is considered a spiritual entity. Now, when the chief dies, or when the traditional priest dies and undergoes funeral rites, he attains a new status, but still under the spiritual entity. Okay, so please make notes of what we've just gone through. Make notes of what we call the transformations, the ritual transformations, the cognitive transformations, the biological transformation. Then make note of what we call movements. Okay, where individuals attain different forms of statuses under from as a result of the various rituals they undergo. Please, any questions at this point? Is there any question? Okay, let's move on. So now we are all familiar with the rites, phases of the rites of passage. Okay, there are three. We have the separation stage, we have the liminal stage, and the post-liminal. So let us look at this very well. I will explain what we mean by the liminal is another name given to that can be used for both the first and the third. Okay, so we will explain what it means to be the liminal stage. So the separation stage. This is the first stage of a ritual. Over here, a person usually moves from a totally previous status to a new status. Okay, from a totally old status to a new status. It can also be characterized by the breaking from past experiences. Now, it is also usually signified by a change in geographical location. So, for example, among the standard of Sierra Leone, when girls undergo initiated into womanhood, they are moved from their homes, okay, to a different location to show that they've been separated from when they were adolescents to now adults. Okay, so separation stage rituals, they initiate or transform a person from a former state to a totally new state. Then we have what we call the liminal stage rituals. The liminal stage rituals. So the liminal stage rituals is the state where the person doesn't have any status. So over here, you aspire to attain a new status, but the liminal stage only prepares you for acquiring that new status. Therefore, under the liminal stage, you do not have any status. The most common of it is the puberty rites. Okay, so let me use my sister as an example. again, before she underwent puberty rites, okay, it is understood that while she was undergoing those rituals, she was an adolescent. She hadn't yet attained any status. She wasn't a child, neither was she an adult. She was transitioning to adulthood. But during the period when she was undergoing that ritual, she hadn't yet attained the status of adulthood. Okay, so that is one thing that we need to understand at the liminal stage. It is also called the threshold. Now, before you enter a door, realize that there's a slab. There's always a slab that separates the inside of the room from the outside. That is called a threshold. So that signifies the crossing that you're trying to do. Okay. So until you cross into the room, when you stand on the threshold, you are neither in the room nor outside the room. Okay. So that will make it a good explanation to understand what you mean by the liminal stage, which is also called the threshold. Then I've given examples of how the liminal stage plays out. Among the guns, before a child is named, the child is brought out naked, okay, and then raised to show that the child doesn't have any status. Then I've also brought an example of Kobus. Okay, I don't really believe that the girls are paraded naked. They wear loin cloths around their waist with beads. However, you can see their breasts and their stomachs. Okay, so I'm not sure they are paraded naked with their vagina showing or something of the sort. All right, so these are examples of how rituals of the liminal stage are carried out. The postliminal or incorporation phase. Postliminal. So if you realize the separation stage is called preliminal. Okay, the separation stage is called the preliminal, and then the third phase after the liminal phase is called postliminal. Now, at this stage, the individual has undergone all the rituals that it prepares the person for another new state. That's why it's called incorporation. Okay, so you have undergone, for example, you have undergone initiation rites as a chief. Okay, during the period when you were undergoing the initiation rites, you didn't have any status. So you are the liminal phase. But after you undergo the liminal rites, then you come into the incorporation phase, where you are now a chief. Now, this is usually characterized by merrymaking. Okay, merrymaking, characterized by other actions that show that you have now attained a new status. Therefore, we need to celebrate that new status that you've attained. One thing you need to understand is that it may be a little bit confusing to understand the shift between the liminal and then the post-liminal. Now, at the liminal phase, rituals are performed. At the liminal phase, rituals are performed. Over here, there are rituals which are performed to show that you don't have any status, one, and to prepare you for the next state. At the post-liminal phase or incorporation phase, rituals are also conducted. Rituals are also performed to show that you've undergone certain rituals which has now ushered you into a new phase. Okay, so rituals are performed at both the liminal and post-liminal. It doesn't mean that when rituals are performed at the liminal phase, they are no more performed in the post-liminal. No, there are rituals specific to the liminal phase, and there are rituals also very specific to the post-liminal phase. Are there any questions over here? Separation stage, liminal stage, and then the post-liminal stage. Does anyone need any quick clarification? Okay, let's move on. Now, of course, there are reasons why rites of passage are performed. What is the importance of rites of passage? One, rites of passage has pedagogical relevance. it teaches a lot of um, lessons in life for the new person who's trying to attain a new status. Okay, for example, a chief who undergoes chieftaincy rights, okay, learns a lot about how to act as a chief, okay, what he has to do, what he does not have to do, and the responsibilities he needs to carry out as a chief. That's why I'm saying that the initiant is someone who's undergoing rituals. He's taking through the nature and essence of the new status. What are you to expect and the new status you have to attain? Then, secondly, you are equipped with the knowledge and skills to function effectively. Okay. Then next, information is also provided on the worldview. During such occasions, during such rituals, the town carries out a lot of um, indirect explanations of what they are doing signifies. And for anyone who comes from an outsider, it's a very good way of learning about the history of the people, and also a very good way for the indigenous of the town to renew their understanding and commitment to their history and culture. Okay. Then, of course, when rituals occur, for example, when festivals are carried out, we have a lot of people coming around. There's a lot of family reunions, and usually during such reunions, a lot of issues are discussed. Okay. Then during rituals, there's also a lot of education about what is right and what is wrong, what you have to do and what you don't have to do. For example, in Almina here, before the Makati festival, the night before the celebration of the festivals begin, there is the traditional priest of the town, through a lot of gestures and then through a lot of rituals, re-explain what has gone wrong in the town, and then what has to be done to avoid any anger against the gods. For example, I remember last 2 years, I went to observe that one, and there was someone threw young ladies were, or I don't know, young ladies were throwing aborted babies into the lagoon. Okay, so the traditional priest was very, very angry and was um, explaining that she had to carry out a lot of rituals to avert any anger from the gods as a result of the desecration of the desecration of the lagoon. All right. So during such rituals, there's a moral renewal of the obligations one has to observe towards the community. So we've done the first part of today's introduction. We've looked at rites of passage. We've looked at the various movements and the rites of passage. We've looked at the various transformations. We've tried to engage with the three phases of rites of passage: the separation stage, the liminal stage, also known as the threshold of transition, and then the post-liminal phase. Please make notes of the various synonyms given for the various stages. So that when you go and see threshold, or when you go and see, for example, if you go and see preliminal, you understand it's the separation stage. Then when you go and see post-liminal, you also understand that this is the incorporation phase. Okay. So please make notes of the synonyms given to each stage. And also try to understand what each of these mean for African traditional religion. Any questions? Okay, now I have an assignment for us. When you go into your manual, you realize that the rites of passage plays out in every ritual we have in African traditional religion. So, for example, when you take naming ceremonies, you can find the separation stage rituals within the naming ceremonies. You can find the liminal stage rituals, and you can find the incorporation stage rituals. And the naming ceremony, alone, you can find rituals which indicate the three stages of the rites of passage. Likewise, when you move further, you come across funeral rites. In this course, they indicate the funeral rites of the Dagara. When you take a look at the funeral rites of the Dagara, you will identify the 3 stages of the rites of passage. Then there's also marriage rites of the Akan for you to engage with in the course, where you are to understand at which stage of the ritual the rituals are separation stage rituals, at which stage they are liminal stage rituals, and at which stage they are incorporation phase rituals. And what I want you to do is, I want us to go to the manual. Okay, now you understand the 3 stages. Make notes. Okay, make notes individually about how the 3 stages of the rituals plays out under marriage rites of the Akan, how it plays out under Dagara rites or funeral rites, sorry, and how it plays out under naming ceremonies of the Gans. I think there are 3 rituals there. It will be very good to do that because it also comes as a question when you need to identify, identify a particular ritual. Let's say a particular ritual of a particular group of people. Therefore, you can say I've identified a ritual of, I've identified the puberty rites of the Akobos. Then you'll be asked to explain how the rites of passage plays out in these 3 forms under the puberty rites. Okay, so please, let's try to make that for ourselves. When we meet next week, God willing, that will form part of our revision for the second part. After we're done with Unit 6, we'll engage with what you've summarized under the various rituals and how the rites of passage plays out under the rites of passage. Did you understand the discussion? I hope you do. Okay, that does it for rites of passage. I will come back to the assignment as a reminder when we meet next week. Synonyms removal. Bonnie. Okay. The Africans have an understanding of what sin is. And of course, one major function of every religion is to, as it were, lessen sin as much as possible. If sin cannot be lessened, another function of religion is to remove the ramifications, remove the consequences of sin, so that human beings can continue to relate with the spiritual. Now, when the white man came to engage with our religion, the white man felt that we did not have a constitutionalization of sin. Okay, so for the white man who was a Christian, sin meant that the blood of an individual was to wipe out the sin of the individual of the community. Okay, that was the understanding of what sin was. But that is different from our understanding. It goes beyond that. It's not just about someone's blood wiping away your sin, but when the African sins, it also affects the whole community. Therefore, how do you wipe away the sin of the individual, as well as the consequences of the sin it has for the whole community? Okay, so that is what we are going to do. We're going to understand what sin is in African traditional religion, and how does the African traditional religious person or the African traditional religious community deal with the ramification of sin, which is both individual and then communitarian. So there are 2 types of sin you need to understand in African traditional religion. Okay, we have moral sin. This is any kind of wrong that we do against a fellow human being. It could be stealing, it could be having sex before you have undergone puberty rights, or having sex outside marriage. And it could also be murder. It could be any kind of sin you can think about. It could be civil, it could be whatever. That's moral sin. Then there's a ritual sin. Okay, the ritual sin is any sin committed against the supernatural. Any sin committed against the supernatural. Students like this example a lot. Okay, having sex in the bush. I don't know why they when you mark, they use that as an example in their essays. Having sex in the bush is a very serious offense against the spiritual that has a lot of consequences against the community, which is true. Because in certain communities, in most communities, when you are found having sex in the bush, you would have to appease the gods in a particular way. Okay. Wearing footwear at certain places. Okay, there's a town here called what's that town? It's not so good, man. There's a certain small river, and before anyone tries to cross the river, the person has to remove the slippers some feet away before going to the river. So now they continue to do that. Okay. So there is moral sin and there's ritual sin. What are the consequences of sin in African traditional religion? One, when we sin, it separates us from benevolent spirits, one of the spirits that protect us from our ancestors, from our gods. That's what sin does. The sin causes poor relationship with the gods. Okay, then the consequences of sin. There's death, there's sickness. Okay, so these are the consequences of sin. How do we remove sin? One, there is the need for confession of sin and the payment of restitution. Of course, the all popular Nigerian movies and Ghanaian movies show that at the end of the movies, you find people confessing their sins and asking for forgiveness. Okay. So it's true. That's part of our culture that when a sin is committed against the community or even individually, the person needs to confess the sin. Then move further to remedy the sin by either paying a fine, offering a form of sacrifice, okay, to appease the gods. Then one thing you also need to understand, as we learned under worship, sacrifice is very key to the removal of sin. We did this in Unit 2, sacrifice. We have various forms of sacrifice, propitiatory and votive. All these are very important in helping to remove sin. So please go back to Unit 2 and try to revise the forms of sacrifice we have, expiatory, etc., which helps us to lessen the consequences of sin and wipe away sin. Then there's also reconciliation. For example, when moral sin is committed, there's a need to reconcile the two parties, okay, that have a problem with each other. So these are a way of removing sin. So my dear friends, that is it for Unit 4. We've looked at rites of passage. We've looked at movement on the rites of passage. We've looked at transformation. We've looked at the various definitions for rites of passage and what it means for the African traditional religious person. Then I've asked you to go to your manuals and then try to apply rites of passage to the various rituals we have over there. We have 3, I think. We have marriage rites, we have puberty rites, and then we also have funeral rites. So please, let's see how the 3 phases play out under these. Then we look at the importance of rites of passage. Okay, what does it do? It creates harmony. It has a pedagogical relevance. It teaches moral lessons, etc., etc. Then sin, the concept of sin. Okay, we have understood that in the background. So you need to bring this into any essay on sin. Okay, you need to explain that the wise man didn't have understand a conceptualization of sin. He felt we didn't have any conceptualization of sin. Because for him, sin meant that someone has to atone. Someone spiritual had to shed blood to atone for the person's sin. But he didn't understand that for us, sin is not only individual, it's also communitarian. So instead of you have to move further from wiping away the person's sin to addressing any consequences of the sin committed by the individual. Okay. Then we look at the types of sin. We have the moral sin, the ritual sin. We also understood the consequences of sin. What does sin do to us? It takes us away from benevolent spirits. It causes poor relationship with the gods. And it also introduces calamities on us, including death. How do we remove sin? Through confession and payment of restitution. Sacrifice. Sacrifice is very, very important. The removal of sin and true reconciliation. Okay. And with that, we are done with Unit 4. Any questions, please? Before we move to Unit 5. Any questions before we move to Unit 5? Okay, there are no questions. Let's move on. Please confirm if you can see Unit 5 on the screen, or if you are still seeing Unit 1 to 6. Hello? Can anyone confirm if you are seeing Unit 5 or Unit 4?
It's Unit 4, that's the...
Unit 4.
Okay. Let me close these things again and see. Okay, so it means that after I share this the slide, I would have to reshare again. So let me reshare the screen. Okay. Okay. Please, do you see Unit 5 now?
Yes, please.
Yes, please.
Thank you very much. Okay, so Unit 5, we are going to deal with the challenges that the poor understanding of African traditional religion brought onto the religion. Okay, how a poor understanding of the religion. When the white man came, when the colonizers came, they tried to understand our religion without engaging with the lived experiences of the African traditional religious person. So, as it were, out of fear or out of an appreciation of the right methods, they stayed aside or stayed back and tried to understand the religion from afar. Now, what did this do? This introduced certain wrong terms, okay? Certain wrong terms which are not a true presentation of what African traditional religion is. Okay, so that's what I've tried to introduce here. In Unit 3, we learned that we learned about how writing started in African traditional religion. If you remember, from the pre-colonial writers, the colonial writers, the early African writers, and the contemporary African writers. Okay. Now, at each of these stages, particularly in the early stages where poor methods were used in understanding the religion, they came up with certain terms. Which were to represent the totality of the religion, but in reality were very unrealistic of what the religion really is. So in this unit, we are to engage with these terms and try to understand how they represent or non-represent the religion. these are the terms Abosum. This is very common in Akan. Fetishism. This was what this came about as a result of the Portuguese. There's ancestor worship. Then there's animism. Okay. So let's start. Abosum. So we remember we said Sum means worship. And Abosum means lesser gods or lesser deities. Okay. You have even to date. It's very common to hear a Christian or probably a Muslim refer to African traditional religious people as Abosum. Okay. However, what we need to understand is that Abosum or the worship of lesser gods is not the only aspect of the religion. As you've already studied, as you've already realized when we began this course, the African traditional religion consists of so many things and not just the worship of lesser gods. Okay, so to use the term Abosum is only a poor representation of what the religion really is and doesn't seek to promote what the religion really stands for. Fetishism. Okay. Now, when the Portuguese came to our part of our world, they came across a lot of what we call man-made or what we call magical religious objects. Magical religious objects. So they came across, they realized that we use a lot of talismans, we use a lot of a lot of whisks. We use a lot of objects to signify our worship. Okay, we have a lot of beads around our waist for protection. We have a lot of rings. So they were wondering why we were so much interested in man-made religious objects. So the particular word for man-made religious objects, which they saw being used in African religion, is fetical. Okay, so they saw the use of a lot of feticals or man-made religious objects, and that is where the term fetishism or a fetish priest comes from. There's a story of some Portuguese explorers who came to Ghana and they saw how the fetish priest was carrying out his function. They realized that he used a lot of man-made religious objects. Now, can we mention some of the man-made religious objects that fetish priests use? Anyone to give us some insights on that? So when you take a particular, when you visit a fetish priest in the shrine, what are some of the man-made religious objects that fetish priest uses? I've mentioned the cowries, right? You realize that they use cowries a lot. You can find animal skulls. Yes, Abdul Fatal. Abdul Fatal, did you raise your hand, please? Okay, so you can find humans, you can find animal skulls, you can find red cloth, okay, you can find cowries, you can find whisks, okay. Okay, I'll have you be Sadiq.
Yes, sir, please. You can find what is called shiri,
Yeah,
or that white clay.
yes,
We call it shiri.
yes, yes. You can find it. They use that a lot, especially when they are performing to the on this rap. Oh, thank you very much. Okay, so these are all man-made religious objects. And then the white man came and he realized that the fetish priest, at that time, it wasn't called a fetish priest, was very much interested in that. And he used that term fetical to refer to the fetish priest. Okay, so fetical means man-made religious objects. And that is how we have the term fetish priest. But you agree with me, and we know that African traditional religion is not only about what we call fetishism. Yes, we use man-made religious objects a lot. We use a lot of rings. Some of us have a lot of cloth around us given to us by our grandfathers and grandmothers. Some of us wear particular type of beads on our wrists and on our ankles for protection. Okay, we use a lot of man-religious objects, but again, that cannot be said to be the totality of the religion. That cannot be said to be the totality of the religion. So to say that fetishism is African traditional religion is very, very much wrong. Okay, so fetishism is part of African traditional religion, but not the totality of the religion. So please, if we are beginning to see the trend, if ever you are asked to describe a particular wrong term used for the religion, you need to refer to what that term is. You need to refer to how it is used in African traditional religion and show that it is only a part of the religion, but not the totality of the religion. And that is how the presentation is going. I've explained what is fetishism, what is fetishism. I go to explain how it is used in the religion, okay, and then move on to show that even though it is used in the religion, it is only a part of the religion and not a totality, or not the totality of the religion. Please use this format in trying to explain the wrong things, if ever you meet it anywhere. Ancestor worship. Okay, now we came across ancestor worship several across, especially the primary sources. Okay, across the primary sources, the oral sources of the religion, across myths, names, we came across the concept of ancestorship. It's very common in African traditional religion. Ancestors are believed to be the dead souls of our relatives. Okay, and then we also learned that death does not separate the relationship we share with our ancestors. However, we need to also appreciate that while the reverence or the veneration given to ancestors is very important in African traditional religion, it does not signify the totality of the religion. It is only an essential aspect that helps us to promote and then practice our religion. But that cannot be said that African traditional religion is all about our ancestors. That is very wrong. There's also another wrong term used by certain scholars, early scholars in the study of the religion, and that has to be corrected now for better understanding of the religion. Animism. Some of us may have met this in undergraduate studies. Animism has to do with they believe that every object, okay, contains a soul, or every object has a spirit or a soul. So when you pick a stone, it's believed that it will have a spirit. If you take an animal, it is believed that the animal will have a soul or a spirit. Animism usually refers to natural objects that are believed to have spirits. Okay, of course, yes, it's true. We believe in spirits. We believe that in our rivers. We believe that in our forests. We believe that in our water bodies. Of course, a river is a water body. We believe that in our water bodies and then in our flora and fauna, we have spirits living there. Okay. However, they believe in the existence of spirits in these entities doesn't signify the totality of the religion. It cannot and does not signify the totality of the religion. So yes, flowing from what Edward Bennett Tyler, E.B. Tyler said, we believe that every natural objects have spirits. And then animism, we believe that every ethnic group has a form of relationship with the natural object. That's what we call totems. Okay. However, it cannot be the totality of the religion. So from this point understanding we have with the religion, we came to the realization that people were saying that when someone pays any reverence to a particular forest, a particular river, they are worshiping the river or the forest. No. When reverence is given to a river, when reverence is given to a particular forest, they are worshiping the God within that natural object and not the natural object itself. So the natural object, which is the profane thing, just serves as a point of reference for anyone who wants to worship the God within that natural object. And I've put an example here. There's a tribe called the Kikuyu in East Africa, so specifically in Kenya. And then when they are worshiping God, they face a mountain. Okay, they face a particular mountain. Now, the facing of that particular mountain signifies that there may be certain gods within the mountain they are worshiping. And remember that once you are worshiping the gods, you are worshiping the Almighty Being. Okay, so once they face the mountain, it does not mean that they are worshiping the mountain, but it means that they are worshiping the gods within the mountain. And I've tried to draw a similarity to our Muslim friends. When the Muslims pray, they face, I think you face the east there, the Kaaba. The Kaaba is found in the east, right? In Makkah. When the Muslims pray, they face the Kaaba. Now, facing the Kaaba doesn't mean that they are worshiping the Kaaba, but it's just a point of reference, okay, to help us as humans to worship the supernatural. Now, let us also remember that as humans, we don't have direct contact with the supernatural. No one has ever seen an image of God. And even for the Muslims, I'm yet to see an image of the Holy Prophet Muhammad. Have you seen an image of the Holy Prophet Muhammad before? No. Across the videos you come up, you will never see any image of the Holy Prophet Muhammad. How much more God Himself? Okay. So because of the lack of contact we have with the supernatural, we need things around us, okay, to draw us closer to our point of worship, object of worship. And this is where the Catholics are highly understood. Okay, the Catholics use a lot of statues. They use a lot of we use the rosary. They use the scapula as a means of drawing a physical contact with who they believe they are worshiping. So if a Catholic goes to stand in front of the statue of Mary and is praying, the Catholic is not worshiping the statue of Mary, but the Catholic believes that the statue of Mary is closer to God. Okay, so when he prays to the statue of Mary, indirectly or directly, he's asking Mary for favors, saying the person Mary is closer to God. I want you to understand that analogy and apply it to African traditional religion, where animism, or they believe in the inhabitants of, they believe that God inhabits naturally. We use that to understand that when they believe that a particular God lives in the natural object like a river or a forest, they are not worshiping the river or forest, but rather they are worshiping the God within that natural object. I hope that is well understood. Then idolatry. Okay. Idolatry comes from the Greek word idol, which means a shape, an image, or a thing. In the Christian context, idolatry means the worship of other gods apart from the Almighty God. Okay. However, we have to understand that understanding cannot be applied to African traditional religion. Yes, for the African traditional religion first, for the Christian, once you worship any other god, it means that you're not worshiping the Almighty Being. In African traditional religion, when you worship the smaller gods and lesser gods, you are actually worshiping the Almighty Being, because the lesser gods derive their essence, they derive their power from the supernatural being, from the Almighty God. Okay. So idolatry may be a poor representation or a poor understanding of the religion. It is not to signify that once you worship other gods, you're not worshiping the Almighty God, but rather worshiping the lesser God really is a way of worshiping the Almighty. Do you have any questions in relation to wrong terms that were used in African traditional religion and how these are unrepresentative of what a religion is? Any questions at all
abosomsom, fetishism, and sister worship, anonymity, idolatry. Is there anything that we do not understand? Okay, good. So we understand the wrong terms, and we understand why these wrong things are only a part of the religion and not totally representative of the religion. Let us take an early break today. This is the second part of the course, of the content for today, the concept of worldview. It's about 8 slides. So let's take a break. Let's come back at 8:45. Then we use about 30 minutes to finish this, and then we end for today. Today we'll be closing a little bit earlier. Okay, but I'll also allow for any questions. So please, when you go for the break, engage with all that we've done for Unit 4 and then what we've done so far for Unit 5. Engage with these contents. I would expect that you try to clarify certain things you don't understand. Of course, as human as lecturers are, we cannot be perfect in teaching. Therefore, there may be some gaps. I hope these questions can help to fill these gaps that our human deficiencies bring about. Thank you. See you in 15 minutes. Thanks.
Okay. So we are back. We have how many? We have 14. Let's continue. So before we left for the break, we were talking about worldview. Okay, we're talking about what the worldview is. And we became to an understanding that African traditional religion has a very peculiar worldview, which tilts around the profane and the sacred. Okay. Okay. So first of all, we'll try to understand what worldview is. Then, from our understanding of what worldview is, we move to apply, understand the African traditional worldview and what it usually entails in relation to the African. So worldview, anyone with his or her own understanding of what worldview is, can anyone in his or her own words give us a simple understanding of what worldview? So my worldview, your worldview. It's a common term, isn't it? But what does it mean? Anyone. So lemma 2.
This when we talk of worldview, you can look at it as your perception about the world.
Very good. The word perception is similar to what we call perspective. A term that is liked by basically qualitative researchers. Your perspective, your opinion about something, your understanding about something. So yes, worldview is your perception about the world around you. Thank you very much. Yes, any second opinion? So what is your opinion? What is your worldview about worldview? What is your worldview about worldview? Okay, good. Thank you very much for that explanation. So worldview simply refers to our understanding about the world and everything around it. Okay. So what do we understand about the world? What do we understand the world to be? What do we understand about the things in the world? Okay. And we can come to a deeper understanding if we use our own experiences of these things we have in the world. Which means worldview will go beyond the profane. Our understanding about the spiritual is also a worldview. Okay, so our assumptions, our understandings, our perspectives, our perceptions about the world we live in, and then anything that relates to it, including the supernatural. That's what we call worldview. Now, worldview considers or concerns itself with certain concepts. One, what we call ontology. Ontology has to do with the nature of the world. So, what is the world? How do we come about, etc. Then the cosmology has to do with the arrangements of the world. If you remember, cosmological myths has to do with how the world began. Okay, these are two things that the world view in any religion concern itself. Now let us look at the African traditional understanding of world. One, the first we need to understand about the African traditional worldview is that the world is made up of two dimensions. The world is made up of two dimensions. We have the physical, what we call profane, which is the physical spaces, any place physical we see. And then we have somehow what we call the sacred. It refers to the spiritual and the supernatural. In relation to this reality, this world, you need to also understand that the worship of God is done directly through the lesser gods. Okay, and we worship God through the lesser God using forms of worship, including divination, including sacrifice, including prayer. Okay, so one of the most important worldviews is that reality is one and two dimensions, meaning that the world is of two dimensions, the physical and then the spiritual. Now, when we want to look at the reality, the physical and the spiritual dimension, let us look at the spiritual dimensions of the world. Okay, so when we take the spiritual dimension of the African traditional worldview, what does it consist of? Okay, when we take the spiritual dimension of the African traditional worldview, what does it consist of? And this is what we refer to as the salient features of the main elements of African traditional religion. Let me go over it again. We are looking at the worldview of African traditional religion, and we are now concentrating on the spiritual worldview. There are two dimensions, the physical and then the spiritual. We are concentrating now on the spiritual worldview, and these are called the salient features of African traditional religion. So at the top of the main features is the Almighty Being, what we call the Supreme Being. Okay, he or she is considered the topmost at the echelon of the gods and ancestors, and is the one for whom all worship is supposed to be directed. So one, we have the Supreme Being. Then two, we have the gods. Now the gods are basically agents and messages of the Supreme Being. Okay, and to worship the gods means to worship the Supreme Being. At the third step of the ladder are our ancestors. Okay, now ancestors are simply intermediaries between human beings and then the God, between human beings and the Supreme Being, and then they provide many forms of knowledge, including medical, herbal knowledge, all forms of knowledge for us to survive on this earth. Then four, we also have, we also believe in spirits and divinities. Okay, spirits and we believe that natural forces around us. I spoke about animism. We believe that natural forces around us or natural objects have many forms of spirits and divinities within them. So we have gods of the rivers, we have gods of the sea, we have gods of the forests. We have the earth goddess. Okay, the earth goddess is sort of an important spiritual entity. So we believe in numerous spirits and divinities. Then at the fifth step, we believe in impersonal forces. Impersonal forces over here refer to witchcraft, refer to sorcery, also refers to magic and medicine. Remember, we did magic and medicine and our worship. Okay, where magic is directly related to medicine. So one, we have the Supreme Being. We are revising the salient features of the main features of African traditional religion. The Supreme Being, the gods, the ancestors, spirits and divinities, and then impersonal forces. Please make note of these salient features of the religion. So far, we've looked at two ways by which we can understand African traditional world. The first one is that the world is of two dimensions, the physical and the spiritual. Two, we can also understand the worldview by understanding what we call the main features of the religion. The main features of the religion consist of the spiritual components of the religion, from the Supreme Being to what we call impersonal forces. Another way through which we can understand the African traditional religion, you can understand the worldview of the African traditional religion, is what we call relationality. Okay. Now there are lots of relationalities in African traditional religion, and I will take it one by one and understand how
understanding of these relationalities leads to an understanding of the worldview of the African traditional religious person. So one, we have what we call the human sacred relationship. Okay, there's a strong relationship between human beings and their object of worship. Human beings believe that in African tradition, humans believe that they owe their existence. Okay, they owe their existence to the sacred, and therefore the sacred must be acknowledged and worshipped through various rituals and beliefs. There is also human-human relationship. Another very important aspect of the African traditional worldview is the human-human relationship. And over here, we need to understand that the relationship between human beings is as important as the relationship between human beings and the gods. Okay, and therefore, this goes to also show that when you have poor relationship with fellow human being, you warrant poor blessing, you warrant ill health from the gods. Okay. However, when you have a good relationship with a fellow human being, you warrant blessings and good health from the gods. Okay. So human-human relationship, human-human relationship, that's the second one. Human-human relationship refers to the relationship between human beings on this earth. And once you have very good relationship with fellow human beings, so when we young you receive blessings from the Almighty. There's also a relationship between the individual and the community. Okay, there's also a relationship between the individual and the community. One thing you need to understand is that whatever actions we take either benefits or destroys the community. So when you do good to someone, the blessings is not only upon yourself and your family members, but on the whole community. When you sin, the consequences and ramifications does not also only apply to you, but applies to your family and the whole community. That's why in African traditional religion, you can always refer to intergenerational sin. Intergenerational sin, where the sin of your forefathers can really affect how you can fare now in the present. And there's also a human environment relationship. We've already spoken about animism. They've also referred to totems, where we believe that certain natural objects, that we believe that certain spirits live in natural objects. When, for example, among the Ashantis, among most clans, and then most ethnic groups, there are what we call totems. Every clan has a totem. Okay, every clan has a totem, and this totem is believed. This totem, which is usually a natural object, is believed to share a spiritual relationship with the gods, or the spiritual relationship with the human beings who believe in that totem. So, first of the human in African traditional religion, human beings share a very intrinsic relationship with the environment. Okay, I've already mentioned totems. We can refer to how we treat the earth goddess. Of course, we believe that earth goddess. Are you aware that earth goddess is considered the wife of the supreme being in African traditional religion? Yes. So the earth goddess is considered that. Therefore, that would instruct how an African traditional religious person would relate to the earth. Okay. That is why it's a sin. Even in your bedroom, in some of African groups, it's a sin for you to even have sex on the bed with your wife. If you want to have sex with your wife, you need to lay a mat because you are having sex on the earth goddess. Okay, so the point here is that the human environment relationship, okay, is directed by a belief in the fact that the environment serves as the abode for spiritual beings and entities, and therefore needs to be treated with reverence. Okay, that is why in fishing communities in the water region and in the central region, Tuesdays is usually reserved as a day off for fishermen. you will not find a single boat on the sea. But it's believed to be a day where the gods are supposed to rest. Likewise, in farming communities, I think Tuesdays are also reserved from farming, so that the belief is that the gods need to rest, and the earth goddess also need to rest in a way of rejuvenating resources given by for human beings. So the human environment relationship is underpinned by the fact that spiritual entities live in the environment, and therefore these spiritual entities need to be respected and revered. Then we have intrapersonal relationship. Now, your relationship with your own self, okay, is very important for your own well-being. Now, we know that we've spoken about the physical and spiritual in relation to the African worldview. You can relate the spiritual and physical to the human person himself. So whilst he consists of the physical aspect, which is the body, he also consists of a soul. Now, what creates this harmony in this intrapersonal relationship between the body and soul is sin. Okay, sin creates a disequilibrium. It creates disunity, and once you're not at peace with the body and soul, you warrant curses for yourself. So intrapersonal relationship, which consists of how the physical components of the human person interacts with the physical, spiritual components, is also very important in understanding the African traditional world. So let's quickly go over. We've understood worldview as someone explained the perceptions or the assumptions that one has about the world and anything related to it. We've also understood that worldview concerns itself with ontology. Ontology is a very popular term in research. It refers to our description and then how the world is. Okay, then cosmology. Worldview also consists of cosmology. It talks about the origins of the world. How does the world come about? What happens to us after death? Who sustains us, etc., etc. African traditional worldview. One, reality is one with two dimensions. Reality, the world is made up of the physical and spiritual, and worshipping aspects of the sacred, like the lesser gods, implies worshipping the Almighty Being. Then we can also understand the African worldview through the main features of the religion. So the main features of the religion consist of the supreme being, consists of the gods, consists of the ancestors three, consists of the belief in spirits and divinities, thus they believe in impersonal forces. They believe in impersonal forces like witchcraft, sorcery, magic, and medicine. So over here you can locate magical religious objects. Okay, magical religious objects also form part of the impersonal forces. Then we can also understand the world of the African traditional person through relationalities. We have the human-sacred relationship where human beings share a very strong bond with the spirit world. Then we have a human-human relationship where human beings are supposed to relate positively, socially with the fellow human beings, and relating negatively with fellow human beings warrants curses from the gods. Then the individual and the community. The actions of the individual affect the community as a whole. Okay. Human environment relationship. Over here, we can talk about how the reverence given to the environment because of the spirits and divinities living in them. Human environment relationship refers to the reverence given to the environment as a result of the spirits and divinities living in the environment. Therefore, the importance to relate positively with reverence for the environment. Intrapersonal relationship. The human person is made up of the physical and the spiritual. The physical is the body, the spiritual is the soul. And we should try as much as possible to prevent a disunity between the body and soul by avoiding sin. Once we sin, there's disunity. And once there's disunity between the body and soul, the human person is not at peace with each other. So, my dear friends, that ends Unit 5. That ends it for Unit 5. I'm wondering if you have any questions for me. Is there any question you have for me? It can be on anything we did for Unit 4 and 5. Any questions? Okay, I see. Yabwedu.
Yes, sir. It's a contribution.
Okay, sir.
Yeah, with respect to the human to human relationship,
Okay.
can we link it to what the accounts call it CP?
Very
That
good.
is, if you have negative thoughts about someone, indirectly you haven't confronted the person, but the spirit forces within the environment can hunt you against that. So can we link it to that, please?
Directly link this. Direct, a very good example of how human beings are supposed to relate with each other and how the lack of good relationship between human beings can warrant curses. So the curses that is warranted as a result of CPA is from the gods, because you don't mean well for your fellow human being. So SIPE is SIPE. Okay, SIPE. It simply like that concept shows that if you had bad intentions for the fellow human beings, even without saying it, even without carrying it, the gods curse you for simply harboring bad intentions for your fellow human beings. It's called SIPE. SIPE is a very common term now. Thank you very much, Mr. Boydu.
You're welcome,
Any
sir.
other contribution? I'm interested in your questions about, do you understand all that I've said? All that we've said, you understand everything?
Yes, sir.
And this time around too, I tried to bring the slides earlier. So I'm sure some of you read the slides and they probably went through the manual before joining the class today. So please come up with some questions. Today we are done earlier. We're done earlier today. Yeah, we're done about 2 hours earlier. Did someone want to say something?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Mr.
Sir,
Boydu.
with respect to African worldview,
Okay.
yeah, the African believe that the spiritual forces or the spiritual life control the physical life. So if you don't balance both of the two, in some way, your existence or your life will be somehow miserable. In a sense that if spiritually you are not doing well, physically too, it will have a negative effect on that. So they believe that life is of twofold, that is physical world and the spiritual world. But the spiritual world controls the physical world. In a sense that whatever thing that will happen physically, it has already taken place spiritually. So African traditional practitioners don't joke with the spiritual aspect of life.
Yeah. Including health.
Yeah.
You don't enjoy the spiritual aspects of life, especially health. So you find the African person not only going to the hospital when he or she is sick, but also going to the traditional priest to try and find out if there's any spiritual cause of the sickness. Okay. So the way we relate to health is It's a very good way of understanding the human-sacred relationship. Thank you very much. Okay. Any other contribution to add to what Mr. Yabuedu has given us? Any other contributions, please? Okay. In that case, we end for today. Please, let me remind you of the assignment we have for today. Please go back to revise the rites of passage. Go to the manual and apply it to marriage rites of the Akan, to the funeral rites of the Dagara, and naming ceremony of the Gas. Please apply it to these 3 rituals. When we meet next week after we finish unit 6, we use the second half of the time to touch base with what you found, and then also review any questions you have from units 1 to 6. Okay. Happy New Year again, and please take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Why?
Abusiafo, good morning.
Alaji.
Aja. Me pacho assignment no de maye no. I say marriage of Akans ena Dagara won. Ena DMBO.
And the naming ceremony of the
Naming
gas.
ceremony among the gas.
Naming ceremony
Yeah.
among the gas.
Yeah.
Sa na ma me nsa we mo me hwe ni yi.
A likely question.
Wa sheda. Nti mo me hwe ni yi. A point.
Unconnect them dito.
Aye. Orama ka mo power the market on the wall. Seti bia a friend is saying I say nduaba me ensa. Seti bia ba ko beti. Yenko hwe yi.
Hello. Hello.
Yeah.
Please, the question again.
Alaji.
Hello.
Someone is asking.
Please, the question again.
He gave us an assignment about marriage rights in Akans and then the naming ceremony of gas and then something about Dagara. Then I said funeral right.
That's right.
Funeral right. Very good. And then I said we should take note of this assignment.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
We should take note of this assignment that he has given us. There's the possibility, say, from maybe bit me about for home. As a last year, so or pointy area be. And okra me as a man taking note of. And so okay assignment be sa. So omoya no omo hama e wo so a. Mo menwe ni ba.
Obi be hama or something.
Ya obi be hama wo so nso e ma obi nso so hama wo so a. Na ebeba. Me say sa suba na me obi say me kire nkola de a. Me obi. Nti se me say teacher ni bi lecturer bi hama ewo bibi so sa na aise. Me de atoto kwana a me nso me fa so a. Me engage me nkola na ma take note of it.
Alaji, the old kind of African traditional religion is how much here. As a the moment or stress on a certain point and I said you be not use the honor. There is element of importance. I was taking note of.
In the set bia or it yeah na can say the gods are not to be blamed. the way obesi a stress e wo ho no ne ade na say questions ne ba obehu say hey ade de obehu say nipa no wa kire ono kra wa ka ho asem e de a kire wo.
Yeah, someone wants to talk. Yes, Sandra.
And please, I think another person who was a underwrite of passage, you know, that's the pushing stage, preliminary and post-preliminary.
Yeah.
I don't know. See, I'm fan koye name and son.
Ah, very good. In rites of passage in the beginning, no. Beginning and sakura waba naming ceremony ne your friend is a puberty right in the same name. The honusu ya papa said the mammy okay.
And no, madam, you know. Osni yem fan ko to ho na me ensa. There's 3 stages no. Offer separation na wakohwe no wo naming ceremony. Now I offer the.
I think
I'm talking about the movement in the rites of passage.
And the ritual no say Ubeya Udi kind of view and this son and a son so Hama so the kind of movie na son what the Odiaba. No car say mostly no say the question or motto in a prayer.
Yeah.
It is a woman name that knowledge of concepts now anything one. You don't just go straight and be answering the question. Also, my introduction to say that
I believe say as a name me and Sabina me my establishing on the Asian in the that world view of we say no ana oka ho asem the explanation that preamble ne sa name the way a man na o describe no and also very important and then assignment to ya or the amaye and after the beginning of the rise of passage you know movement in the rise of passage you know that profane to profane sacred to sacred nesa nema na o chirichiri mu no sa nema miensa wi o ma yenhwe ni enti me kra ye sha ase no movement in the rise of passage no me indicate bi say possible exams question e bet me afole ewo ha ba bi ena a friend is saying well after that no so over separation limina no a ene sa ayina e ba be see the importance of the rise of passage no ade a very na marriage rights and puberty rights unso can say no the I say very familiar with sa nema no the ba the world what do we call it momwame
world view.
World view of your friend is saying we know a honso so yemi ho yi pa na fa assignment na wo de amaye.
Hello.
Yes.
Abusian from Pacho, manual se model na o kan Pacho so bi wa on fanto platform ne so why na me ni na me kohwe because na o hama wo ho no che se wan kosua no na se o follow only on the slides na e bia na waso akoye hye nti esere se mo wa mo fanto so my bam choa
Eno no just all kwapio.
Oh, okay.
Eno just all kwapotwe.
Alaji, your partner says so will be a fatu 8-year platform so. Yeah, WhatsApp platform so bet ma download you.
No, I think say Utie. I think say we download do a. O bet me download do there. E do so.
Oh, bet ma download. Ba ko pe but 400 or 300 something pages.
Also introduction to African traditional religion.
PDF. And to the one
Man on the page in the soda or the apple to say another.
And the other so the dada.
Hey, okay, I'll go back and
We are watching say what says here. Not say your friend soft copy. Anja, and can no dear party and can hard copy na feed the crowd slice no de na mu anke. No crani me my kwakotwe na said the kase tie no ohwa ayi na ya twene nyina eno na di English na ayi sentence and it part na achi anu so bi wom pa ekura me kan kura ma hura to ba bi nte he ekuta me kwa ayete say wa elephant
Allergy.
Allergy
me so me now. Many parents got download no one share aspect that all kind. Right.
No na me ka tra ne say okotwe mbomu a ebe boa ne chen say obe download or download na okon na yi no so a wan hwe yi a na ni be ha but okuta hard copy no a eno be bo
Allergy obiare how if I go about it.
It is true there.
Now, so far, we should for Obi or 80 hours na pass question be one. So pass could be or how come to say na. Mr. Award or pass could.
We will be back. And then for primary for the primary here. The ICB area said that we are sorting a capture on questions related to your D. Although the word view name puberty writing those kind of stuff, but we know they're more upgrade than primary there. So I can also that nothing was yaba. Aspect to do my new
Hey, see
Alaji, the discussion prefect, Buano.
Masa. Wait.
Alaji Buano.
See idea. Say, met me abuan. Say me krana. Me bisa ma mo kra mo keka ma me. Na dit na say me buano. Monke. I naming ceremony. Naming ceremony in of accounts. Me boa.
Yeah.
Naming ceremony of accounts. And a funeral rites of Dagari. Very good. And I gas no de ne gas no de ne
Gas no de naming ceremony. Right?
Ceremony.
Gas no de naming ceremony no.
Marriage rites of Akan.
Marriage rites of Akans.
Funeral rites of Dagari. And naming ceremony of Gas.
Aha.
Thank you, Madam.
Abusiafo. Extremo mama yensi gina na discussion we say no yen shase.
Good morning. And can I maybe say because last week you can want some you say already I market TV that last block.
Yeah, say yeah creative that
block one maybe
I think the be fair no so I say discussion no so no. Antimi amwa. Nobody is taking control.
Already okay, and I will be a hobat, will be any hobat, will be a muscle.
Na me no
Mr. Award me back Oma.
Oh, me ta mo be tia na akọ e. O be tia na akọ e. So for be tia na akọ e.
It's about ba ko na me te say come one share link to me. Hello.
Yeah, one of my concerns is religion or the study being to say who's the morality na ya na who my course what as it's part of us but your course our platform as well who's the English for the door so pa most
also
almost distract here or papa I was it we dominated that platform.
My morality.
Yeah. Or I didn't say taking note of because also you English now. Sembe mobile you to be in casa ho. Ya ye di no mobubu o. Omo ba hand on person ta be dey. You can see a chuma omo. Ubu no mu ye dey. O say you control sa dey nsema sa ye ba ha ye dia o. Iti mu nya ma ye ne nso ye mfanye dey. Ye mfanye dey dey. Mu dey mu tie
Na say also that dia. O da so dia obe take advantage. Also how I also obe contribute to any the way a manner obe hold you. Ade na nkasa no obe jata wo bo. Ene na be ma ade no wa ba be ye friend say center of
some of us beat so large one no the which man kasa man for more Michael more Agnes okay for no so ho what I say
Sergio
enye debate na ye
Sergio
no
oh English for no no cry what would you say English for no pekasa oh wow is a religion for no wow is a religion for I say you pay who asem bisa so English for them yeah we better be a home
and sometimes inside na question bi wo hono ma enye senka ubisa bi wo hono ma obi di hono bisa dada so na they just want
no mark of aba
ade bi wo mu say wo ti ase simple wo ti ase simple no de won baby
and you nim bibi
I can't remember say yeah morality last one na about the ancestors no questions bi wo ha you shouldn't ask ebi wo hono ma utimu se dia nipa ni bisa no obi edi kan aka but still na nipa ni pese o ka ma yete nene se wo hu
e dey sina samo ho
that ness wo ho
I sina samo ho ya at the time I meet for the first time and I choose rep no I was insisting say agi who that am me keep on mention agi din because agi a religion ono no you know you can say curriculum studies no no that is the more reason when you say no I was agi them because the rep am man I say I don't know who be say you jam o mafa
enti oba
mafa
see again no
I don't know, so now it's me joining there, but when you close to lecture, I don't need a ding common.
Na me bisa say CCA or platform iso.
I don't know.
Na yeah engage na or so there.
Actually, me buy man checking and share day, but me as a tight check it, but another man check it. As an enemy tight.
You know ya eba Agnes wo.
It really answer money kind from afar. Why? But
we
very
man the one number.
Oh, me on a number.
And a friend catcher and say.
I just say, and I'll eat us. I just say, I'll eat us one.
Alaji kasana yenti ampacho aha won say me concerning their more about won say yeah curriculum no but I no but yeah curriculum no but yeah curriculum no about past question my master ni bufu ye but you say kaya I'm only who say 30 years so
somebody asked the last time.
By every past question. Now try any and not send you news and suban saints. Me say send
it. May sure say obi sense our past question no enye major student
because e balance papa you bu na yen ka say we English for problem na ne ade na ba afete enti no se course rep madam na na omu se na ombe behave on platform so na man ko ka me kan se na obi din kaka yen mejo yen na yen mejo wo muti no if anything na we should dominate na say back class ye ka say obuma pass you shouldn't sit down for them to come and take over but no mo kwa pass ya na mejo na ye ho enti no mesre mo munya madam Agnes na these conversations no so no mo ne have mame concern
But
mame
one thing is, hello.
Hello.
Pacho
Yeah,
ye
one thing is the lecture is very, very, very calm. Well, you're very calm. Off air. Well, you're very, very calm. When you think of what
I believe say unso no kra kan bibi say you for me discussion platform no a e betimi de na abaso this year face challenges bia obetimi aba abeboa yen enti unso wa open the doors say anytime bia ehia no bia no ye frɛ na obeba enti I believe say sesi a ye kase mo me nkasa me nya no ho saa say anwumre ɛna ye memenda say anwumre say ye ni program foforo bia say binom bɛyɛ ɛbɛyɛ lecture wɔ baabi ade a mom yɛmfa yɛ discussion no yɛmfa nhyɛ aseɛ na ɛnɛ kora topic ya yi baabi a ɔde yɛfa mu ɛnɛ yɛmfa ɛno kora nhyɛ aseɛ after that then we will go back to baabi yɛhyɛ aseɛ free no na
okay,
yɛboɔ back
sorry guys.
na
Hello.
ka yɛma age no ɔnyɛ ɔno ɔntaki center stage na yɛn nso so yɛmmoa adeɛ na yɛ
Hello.
discussion enti contribution may come from anywhere obiara bɛka bi. Not just here, the Ashas here. Say, and yes, idea, we cannot organize ourselves.
Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Hello.
yo
Yeah,
it's
Pato. Aha, see the American say, often of any dinkoma, he's very calm. And then the philosophy they say, when he comes, he give you the needed material or give you the useful things that will be here for the course. Then after that, you'll be off. Idea would you just said yes, can answer all my past questions. But within his own wisdom, no, you know, what happened? Oh, what do you call it? Curriculum.
Curriculum.
At the end of the day, he give you areas, but he doesn't want you people to instruct him before he can do that. No, and yet from his own will, and by force, and or so.
Yes.
On what I would choose over which I said, Pasco be and drop here, they be own thing. But along the line, as and when say, oh, the casa, that's all band there, which means that he's giving you areas indirectly, but when we are smart, I won't put your part. So as the incident said, a large can. Any again come and again so dear. Any didn't come be about that. So
Asama Brian okay and draw on the class number so nti me one number my friend na butan so ada na lecture number so yi and asama okacha me point blank without me say what say ono ye lecturer na course rep no friend no ɛna ɔno no bɛhyehyɛ time a ɔno ne yɛnhyia ɛna ɔka kyerɛ ne sɛ ɔno time a obenya ho yɛ Sunday ɛne Wednesday na napa na yɛhyɛ ɛna course rep no insist sɛ Friday 7 to 9 no ɛwɔ hɔ nti ɔma mɛkyerɛ adeɛ ɔno ne argue sɛ mɛba anaasɛ memba and we all saw what happened.
okay, on him I say Kofi no on one religion maybe or English. Agnes and a religion. And Agnes has been known say on in terms of communication, the way if any lecture make kasano. A good, a cool. So I say, will be only Agnes be any house kasa. But as a Kofi on your na wo school on your religion maybe. On any minor.
Okay.
What I say, we say, yeah, position them so GB, but fine, you know, come home and do an but yeah, I was see a taking center stage and you may ham on Agi because I didn't want to keep
I didn't know me so make us say the time me so make us say yes sir ono ne koye no e no come say up ono no ko dictate ma papa ne say e bo eno ano 7 to 9 o me kire ya de mi wa he was suggesting so obenya ho and kwesi ada nwumre. It's yes I no so dictate man no so nim say no your principal person one kasa ono so a one show yi app no. And eventually no your movie across Sunday no. It say you obi of free religion na say ono no ejina mu ma ya. I feel say ebebo apa because omo no de omo no.
Serious. So you as a
Okay, no
teacher,
problem. I
you
think
as a teacher,
say
say, student detect how do you feel?
Yeah.
Wow. It's just a suggestion. Obenya fine. Onya me crown me student be catch me say madam ye be 20 classes that times here I will not go.
Aha. And son oh 7 to 9 were on Friday. He should come and teach. Yesterday he was like, oh, but me time I'm in farmer child. Because and also so no, and yes, I'm not on the time I met yes, and say, a bit more exams in no. Ma on bet it's not like no the best say unya ho ye na say e panic to say ba na so akwohye ne say o ma me cha de da say as wo no as wa fa ne wa oho esa so e
okay, so your conclusion the same.
Conclusion is say religion rep. That's Madam Agnes.
Okay, religion rep. Yeah, the ama Agnes said the na ya kano.
Yes.
Okay. With regards to your discussion, no, me make a suggestion. Say program bi na ye nimu a. Yen set time bi nka yen sha se na anwumre. Me suggestion.
Alaji.
It's not bad.
Alaji.
Aja.
Alaji. Next time you pay class rapper and a course rapper. Ayana, Mr. No one yabutra crane ya him. Why? Because for few days one our demand.
Yeah, for few days me and Kazan very much instrumental. But yes, I need them jitum. Who say yeah, but you cry who say me can for few asem na for few ni ha. Moka, the because I never knew say for fear no or yeah with you. That means so or yeah religion major. To be honest with you. And I'm can say for fear no or yeah your friend is away or English. In fact, I don't think na me advocate for fear and to it I'm sorry.
Yeah, because on block 1, no, discussions when it was time for exams, Old Testament, he was doing so well. Timmy him so and the major. It's when they were mentioning his name, me too. I was there nodding my head, so okay, full fear is okay. No,
and I make us all religion major. Now make us all major religion.
Religion major for no, we are not many.
We are 44.
No, 44.
Yeah, 44.
Yeah. Wow.
Across the country.
Wow.
Across all centers.
And say na yehuno going forward no ye be hu kwan ye be fa so. And I believe say religion major for no say yetimi nya ye ho a na yetimi identify ye ho yie pa hu ye ho yie say he nipa ne susum kura atwamu a na ye hu say religion major so it going forward no ebama yetimi ahu say ye program bia no a ye be program no to suit our your friends academic interest.
Are they recording it?
No.
They are done.
Oh, that when they Obia recorded.
Yeah. Okay. Meaning say because of
or instruct you be an anipano or ye recording no.
Anything they are doing.
I'm so free so no so free so. Yeah. Free so recording also. Free so.
I don't know the as the person who upload
Say be ana ono the or recording the lecture na or recording.
No, I started from the time I get in,
Obi
and
a
from
we
7 to
that the aka
11.
be here
Okay.
And I don't think so. Obetimi ato akoso a record ye personal and your private discussion there be.
So the channel going forward. The Juma Besson. And customer why?
What's it?
Why? Why? No Juma customer. You know, next blog beyond. You are counting you. So be why?
So na some way there and when I hear na ye boa boy. Se si asem mi guso amebo. Enti ya nya again nko ade. All of us are going to run behind me. Me ankasa no kura wo mu ne say mo ma me kan kire mo. No kura wo mu ne say me nye a friend is saying abreast with sa information technology ne sa ne ma no.
Okay.
No credit me nye all that me nye good. Ma report na mo se wo create ade ne de to say na ye nyina ye mra na eja ye mra me ye ayia and we will come and also contribute. This is who this see me now say me that kind of we say na masa a holiday and kwade. Entina ya na mi gare.
Our 50. Why? The needed information you don't provide.
And also the most set platform no. The most set platform the man na mo my ba on board. Na me say see akra say ayi bi wo na say wo ka say me coordinate na me nya yi amasa Mary. Na mom no ete say ye wo ayi nkrofo bi wo ho. Ye wo talented and gifted preachers bi wo ho. Kristosumu omu obi. Ena nkramofo so ye obi. Nipa no onim Bible akenkan. Onim Bible akenkan mutie ni ye. Onim Bible akenkan. Quran so onim akenkan but onim quotation no. Onim quotation nti se ono onya bo quotation na se o kenkan ma na. Masa commentary obeye no. When we abeka se Bible ni na yeden e woni trim. Enti obia woni way of specialization. Enti ase no se yenya obi obetimi coordinate yen no wahu se o ye na ye ba on board. Enya ba on board dia ye betimi contribute to aboa ama bibia akos.
Abusuafo.
Ekobi wo mu.
Abusuafo. Why is it echoing?
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah.
Be on or yeah, religion minor, any tree major. Now, I'm create group for English major, say tree minor, say then group no. They have created the group in the group no so no. They are contributing monies lecturers na a show my dear no. They are giving them extra tuition. It is a uchiya sasika na de wakoto sa platform no so na teacher ni no extra tuition na obeya ama omo no na omo de waka ho te wantu a on join it and ye nyina ye English man but omo no a create sa group na teacher ni no meet omo inti no say me fan say e bia ye 4 weeks ye no ma ye wi but teacher ni wo extra time a o share omo. But they are doing contribution. I think it's 20 cedis each. Ain't no end the lecture. No, they are having extra tuition somewhere. And besides, who says such a person is a nipan will be beer or the bema and now farm mom. No, no, tia no, onya or bema what's an encana. It is a young religion for seeing a yen so dear, a dear, and as a young quan a dominate or so. Then we take it from there. Then every other decision, and then we take it among ourselves, and then, it will help all of us. That's what I suggest, though.
Hello.
Sure, they are not recording us there.
Hello. Hello.
Nobody's
Hey.
recording.
Okay. Thank you.
Hello.
Yes,
Hello.
Okay,
The issue connection a good idea. On the contrary, yes, last year. Let's
So how spring now?
Okay, okay, they make can say the this is an suggestion, okay, nice idea. But within ourselves, yeah, a bit my without saying consult you be the entire Americans and say for now, you discussion. I think say the positive aspect of it will go a long way to help us pass our exams than say we are going to rely on a third party and okay, nice idea there, but always bear it in mind that UCC is UCC and they frown against all sorts of that. You rely on within our scope here. Your discussions, it will help us enough to pass the exams. Why? Okay. Into platform there.
Religion and most I aim to mean within ourselves. Sebio Old Testament fire the Nitia Koto 8 years. We can only say
Any problem? Okay, the attorney say platform debut into you best send the link number on board. Then from there, you discussion anywhere. Right. I think say discussion
Pacho, sa platform no. Old one na RME major no. No, I say different
outside communities.
Religion major. Solely for religion major. Okay.
Inti emfa say who ni will be center no religion. Then now what add so to say keep so mu true pe ene wo inti west school dem say somewhere be 50 16 or so inti what the people within there minimum on board inti be other centers na ke be so afre na ya de link na no so ade say the be ya encourage outside the community. Okay, and the number message box now oh platform we are what difference centers 9 centers back into the link and one also the religion
number no o number no na emfa ma o mo no
aha nanka me the link this send wa nipa no bom ha am the link na ma no Nessa na ni Guinea ya religion for na and trying to outside for.
Okay, some me dey me number dey wunim.
This will be allergy.
Okay.
It would but we find number into. Oh.
I think this is here. Erica was so. Sunyani. Mention Sunyani.
It's would you know what's happening for. Oh, boy, no one send the So I give you a number. It's another in the street. I'm the platform guys. She's part of it. Yeah. And then West Kufoni answer part of it. Into you outsiders, sorry, different centers. Nanki na back if you are not within there. So the minor phobia join.
Senior major for your six.
And you can't let you
I think that I Erica name. Those I
no. Minimum
and they said to be a besia. Yebesia anti yesia. Now those people no me no me nti aka nipa for a religion major nko even though yeah mind of only be mun so be yi bi na mum as I said odema major for nko next week say me kwan me me face to face enti for na next week
Saturday.
Yeah. And a Sunday.
Wow.
I believe say Yebeshia we Isaka.
Into the alleged number 20 like Bonnie High. Now me follow why?
All the two okay, Fatwa we say meet me abwa.
But we always could be a more high because that. Why? We always could send out.
Ya obuadu.
Yeah.
Oh. Na eba beto so se asa ko.
Kwayi. What? Allergy. What am I saying? Oh, na but share kwasi ho phone. Oh, baby, I say
what about ebeto me ma yi no so.
Inti hono na make sure baby I will be.
Inti sa no eya me mo fa he.
Na make sure say. Oh, baby, I red button. Phone, baby, I red button. Baby, audio no so. And baby, raise your hands.
Aye.
3 dots down.
Baby, raise your hands no.
Answer 3 dots.
Aye.
But 3 dots.
I want me my you know so no.
Phone, 3 dots na was.
A 3 dot na was yo no ba na babia ye raise your hands no eno aba
into ba o see call message
in call message yeah
ko be Babo
ya boadu
okay on the number okay into the we install me high
me bawo say number ne da ho
it will save your phone so na bomb high WhatsApp
in this case no me ma message
WhatsApp na me fa link
like this. Aba.
Mamen try and say which me add share no ha. Mamen try and say which me add share no. Why? To the moment we discuss, more also discussion.
Alaji.
Yes.
Who dey chiro ni no man no so who we are. No. Why install ni no man no e wo phone so. So what you say? Who save ni no man no wo phone so a. Na say why you obi no man. O man WhatsApp message. No man hi.
Simple. Simple kra ma me.
No man hi wo no ni WhatsApp so. It is any the obi no man no send you link no.
And the number no dey my ye.
Go WhatsApp no. No man hi.
Yo, Mate.
From share link and include it match location no
why. Me kra me ye na mama high sia. Yeah, analog.
Yeah, boy.
Hello, madam.
Pacha mama hi. You send him why?
Okay, me dey be right.
Alhaji. What's the honor?
Hey. What do you mean?
Brian.
Hello.
What's the number?
Okay, into bomb high na. Me fa won kan.
Okay.
Brian. Maybe I should be me say me you see me still you see link in the my boss on your couch request to join. Request the admin
Auntie, me approve.
Okay.
Why?
Yeah, hear me there no. Aba.
What the number?
Mama hi.
Okay. Alhaji
Yeah, man. Thank you.
Okay, the tenant Madam America so okay. Pacho una odini sika panana. Okay. Nti I administrate and to know for which man do. Why?
Okay.
Madam Sarah. Madam Sarah.
Amacha anwumre tambe. Yem time said be a ye didi ehun komo ani ehun say time say ne yaba onbo.
Time the nyama mama come na be ya de na me man dey wait ye nya hinti
Ene de no credit.
patrol ladies na mumbo ay fix time one
Eric ane ka say.
No lecture being
Hey, you are you? Yo, sentence and next part 11 yeah. 11:56.
Number your time.
Yeah, you 4.
Okay. 7 years. Or 6 days. Normal share.
I think Obia nka 6:30 na ya platform no ready na amanfo ewuram
6:30 na kebia ya beto se yeshia no
omonye edidi nkomo se de yedi eh 27 na ya kaji anashim.
Okay, the TNI yana si alaji center bia nkenya nipa ba ko so nkobenya majority na dia send o media SMS bulk message no send o say yeshia
So why madam Erica
what's go for me will be green to make me
no obey
I heard you.
So the why your friend is saying way. In fact, I mean nim others no numbers na. And then come say you 60 pe. Ndin kan dey anya dey.
But me
numbers. O say
boy na so okay.
Brian.
Madam.
Me ba chozane kale jawa and me what you
Okay. But also was who two the number.
Me what two na can number.
Okay. But me have link in send you
Okay, no problem.
Boy na you say boy to be you say okay. So ono dey
tuntum bi no. Ana ko.
I think say boy tuntum ba ko penam say one and na lady no.
Ai.
No my
yeah, lady kese no. Ono ne ai boy ba ko bi ta nante pa ba tam so no onye mejo.
Ten no.
Yeah, you can nante pa no.
I am mejo.
Sa.
Okay, say you curriculum. Na oti. Ani mu pa papa ni tu ne ba echi. Unto
okay. Na say I sometimes I need to cross e be shia.
Me nye bio.
Onye Uye twi.
Tree mine.
Two your friends English, you know.
English.
Okay. Okay.
And mama Muye English one.
I mean me English minor. Ntino yeshia.
Why na
Yeshia me maybe so mo de oye major no. Na ma je na number. Why?
Okay.
Yo, into the
7 o'clock.
7 o'clock. Yeah. Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Pacho masende ohai ana uninsu bi. Okay, ude yebishia 7 krono.